Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Becoming You podcast. I am so excited. We have a guest this week, and it's none other than Payal Desai, who's become a good friend of mine over on Instagram world. And I've been asking her for quite a while now to join me so that I could ask her questions on a lot of things that I relate to in her life. So before I start firing away questions, she's a mom to two boys like me. She is a teacher. She is a fashionista, and she is my style guru. She's built her entire Instagram platform on sharing her style and the things, the products she loves. And I just love that she makes me feel good about the clothes that I buy nowadays. And she also leads an alcohol free lifestyle. So, welcome, Pyle.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. And that was such a wonderful introduction.
The feeling is mutual. I remember coming across your Instagram profile quite a while ago now and just immediately being like magnetized to your personality because you're so authentic on Instagram. And I think that's what attracts a lot of people to you because you have fun, you love your fashion, you share your expertise, but you also show the messiness of your life, which I think is that's what attracted me to you. Would you say that's kind of an
Yeah,
accurate take on who you are on Instagram?
absolutely. And I love hearing that because really my goal is to come across authentic and be myself. And so I don't hide behind that, whether it is, the hard moments, the challenging moments that we're all facing over specifically like over the last couple of years. And that's really when after the pandemic hit, that's when I honed in so much on the page and it became like a creative project. And so I'm really grateful that it's grown and it hopefully continues to thrive. And it is all about connection and that genuine connection. So, I'm glad to hear that feedback all the time. And yeah, life is messy. That's the truth of it. And so even if I tried to hide that fact, I probably wouldn't be successful because life is messy.
Yeah, a lot of Instagram followers, try to portray this perfect lifestyle and it's tiles, right? That's you get a snippet into their life and some of them, no judgment against them, but you aspire to be like them, right?
Mhm.
But with you, there is a genuine connection and by watching your stories and watching your post, reading your post, I feel less alone because I'm like, "Oh, she struggles with it too?"
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing to come across that.
Yeah. And I mean, as for sharing the fashion, that's just what makes me light up. I love fashion. I always have. And actually, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a fashion designer, but my parents were like, that's not going to pay the bills. And so I just was encouraged to choose a more traditional path. I'm just very glad that I've been able to integrate it into my life and that yes, fashion has always been important to me, like the clothes that I wear. I have two older sisters and my mom, and so I've always been the go-to person that they check in with for outfits and weddings, and I'm always like the stylist, makeup, all of that. But now to be able to take that to clearly like a larger audience and really like I build a business around it is what's kind of happening now because I'm able to monetize off of some of it. And so that's just exciting.
So this is a question I had not planned on asking, but it came up as you were saying, your parents gently like coaxed you in another direction because
Mhm.
your heart sounded like was in fashion and fashion designing. This has come up for me recently because as I watch Bridgerton and I see the
Mhm.
two lead female role models, right? That was jealousy within me when I saw them make it on the big screen because I'm like,
Mhm.
man, they had the guts. I'm sure there was a lot of
Yeah.
opposition for these ladies, right? Because they're just like us. They come from very traditional families, just like
Mhm.
us. And I found myself like very uncomfortable, jealous, judging them. Like, how
Yeah.
can they have their dreams come true? And I didn't have the guts to do it, right? So there's shaming there.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering for you, knowing what we know now about pursuing our heart and our love and whatever it might be within us, like I feel like we're in this generation in between the old conservative way of
Yeah.
living and forging ahead to what do we want our kids to believe and know that they can do whatever they want, follow your heart, right? How
Yeah.
does it feel for you to be in that in the middle of that generation, and have you had those type of feelings that I'm talking about?
I've absolutely had those feelings. And like as a parent myself, I struggle with that because the half of me wants to tell my kids, go chase your dreams and with like reckless abandon, do so. But then there's logic to that.
Mm.
And I know that real life kicks in and you do have to have, I guess, a backup plan. You do have to like be logical. And so I think that for as a parent, like for the kiddos, we're going to take it one step at a time and kind of see how their life unfolds and support if they have that true passion. I don't think I'm going to stand in the way of that. I don't really know, but I do feel like no matter what and how old you are, you can start over. Like I'm at this point in my career right now where I I feel a little lost and it's uncomfortable. It's
Mm.
very uncomfortable because I'm just not sure if next year I want to be back in the classroom. And I'm moving across the country, as you know. And so this is a turning point for me and it's an opportunity. So I can make a choice that truly like dictates the rest of my life. And so as I'm simultaneously building this brand, is that something that if I pour my heart into, could it grow? And now it's not so much the support of my parents that I'm looking for, but it's almost like, is my husband on board, right? Because we're a partnership. And so if I'm not going to bring in that month to month reliable salary, is he okay with that? Is our lifestyle okay with taking that kind of a risk? And so the questions are different. And it's something that I'm just tossing around, but it's kind of exciting that I don't feel that I have to make a logical decision right now. I feel like if I want to, maybe this is my chance to just go for it. And the rest of my like I don't want to live in a moment where it's like, okay, just because I've been a teacher for 14 years and just because that's all I know how to do, that is what I should retire with. I don't have to do that.
I
You know
love
what I
that.
mean? So that's an
Yes.
exciting feeling. I'm kind of thriving in that, living in that for the moment, and just going to see where it takes me.
Yes, I'm totally on board with that. You're talking to someone who's reinvented herself like 4 times
Hmm.
already. So I am a true believer in following where you feel led to, because I feel like you can make the biggest impact in the world when you do the thing that lights you up. Like that's where your
Yeah.
gift is, and that's where you were put on this earth. So
Yeah.
um
And I think that maybe there was a reason for why I didn't pursue it, 20 years ago. And I think that there's been a newfound confidence in myself. And there's a lot of things that attribute to that. And probably like the universe had to bring me to this moment and this level of confidence and this belief in myself
yeah.
to pursue this.
So that's a
So,
great segue to my next question. So a lot of people go looking for confidence, like something to happen in their life that they think is going to give them a boost of confidence. What do you think has led, like, what has happened in your life that's led you to have more self belief and therefore self confidence?
100%, it was removing alcohol from my life. And, it was a very deliberate decision to do so. Um, so when I did so, I removed anything that like I was burdening myself with, any obstacle that I was intentionally putting in the way of the things that I wanted to accomplish. And when I did, like it with sobriety, it takes a while. And also, like, it's a journey. So once you do eliminate alcohol or lessen, however, whatever your take is, but once you do so, you slowly start to see the benefits.
Mm.
And the confidence isn't overnight, it grows over time as you start to get to know the new you better and you start to love that person. And so, that confidence that I'm talking about, it's because I look in the mirror and I like who I
Mm.
see. I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of myself as a mom. Uh, Even when I don't get to everything on my to-do list, I feel empowered that I will. There's nothing standing in the way of that. So I think that the confidence is so it's really inside. But when it is inside, what I've learned is that it exudes on the outside.
Yes.
So, because I was always doing everything exterior for my confidence, I was always trying to, dress a certain way. And I've always loved fashion, like we talked about. So, on the exterior, I kind of like was put together, had it all together, but it was inside that I was struggling. And so, when I've worked to fix that, to heal, to figure myself out, the confidence just kind of comes, like you don't have to work on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It joins you on the journey and it's awesome.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing like some of your dark moments before you made the decision to cut out alcohol completely in your life? Like what were some of your lowest lows?
Yeah. So it came to a breaking point post pandemic. I had my second son. Well, sorry, not post pandemic.
Pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, it was March 2020, and I was just about to give birth to Dev. The world shuts down. And so in that moment, I'm like, okay, my parents can't come to stay with me. I don't have like even family that we have around here is now not permitted to come in our home, to keep them safe, to keep the kids safe, and all of that. And so many of us were going through this, but I was postpartum going through it. I had expected that Carter was going to be in school. And so my postpartum experience with Dev was really supposed to look different because I wasn't rushing back to work. And I was so looking forward to like bonding with him, feeding, making like that genuine connection with him that I did feel that I missed out on with Carter because I really had to rush back to work after 6 weeks. And none of that happened. And so now here we are at home, but there's like all these stressors of the world around me, and we're all taking on so much. But then there are things in the home as well that are just burdensome. And so it's not a moment of peace at all. And Hiran and I, my husband, like we enjoyed drinking together. It was always like social with friends, and even just the two of us hanging out on the couch, watching movies, drinking wine. And I could sense that slowly it was becoming like such a dependency during that time specifically. I think it had always been a dependency because the weekend would hit and we would be drinking. And I've always struggled with setting myself a proper limit. Since college, since I was introduced to alcohol, I have struggled to know my limit, understand it, and stop. And so, that's led to blackouts and not remembering nights and not remembering interactions. And it's always been excused because in my younger years, well, it seemed like everybody around me was blacking out and we were all partying. And actually, that was like a badge of honor. Like, I don't remember the night. That then turned into adulthood and different phases and milestones of adulthood in which I thought that I was going to calm down and learn my limit. Well, you don't learn your limit when you're actually struggling with an addiction. And that's what I was faced with during that time after Dev was born. Though I had a newborn at home, I was finding ways in the evening to drink, test my milk if I needed to, save up, it's difficult for me to talk about that. And I think that's what really led to a downward spiral, because it was me prioritizing drinking, which I thought was what I was using to help my mental health. In fact, it was deteriorating my mental health because I was struggling. And so I was not getting to the root of that. I was also very worried about heading back to school in August because we were still in a pandemic and my district was going to head back. And for teachers, this was a really difficult decision. Do I go back in the classroom? And I live in Texas. And so there weren't exactly strong mandates when it came to mask wearing. And so there was just so many things happening. And I was really beginning to feel like postpartum depression symptoms. I wasn't not diagnosed with it, but I was not myself.
Mm.
I could not recognize myself. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like the decisions I was making. I didn't like my reactions. I was snapping at Carter. I wasn't the mom I wanted to be to him. And Kieran and I were in constant conflict. And I just was like, okay, maybe this is just like life with two and we're stuck at home. But that conflict was something we hadn't dealt with before. And it was really upsetting. Because I could see where I could see my fingerprints on it. I could see my role. My reactions and my overreactions were leading to our relationship heading in a direction that I didn't like it to. So my sisters and he as well encouraged me to talk to a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I set up a virtual appointment and I spoke to a therapist. And like within our first conversation, I was sharing and really complaining about him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, what do you want to talk about? I was my husband. That's what I want to talk about. Our relationship. I don't like where it's at. I don't like how we communicate. She's like, tell me about your husband. So I start just sharing about like how we met, our story, what we like to do together. And I came to this point where I said, well, the only thing we have in common is that we drink together. And so she's like, okay, hold the phone. Let's talk about that a little bit. And so as she started to dig in, she was asking me like, well, how often do you drink? How much do you drink? And she must have had this like expert level sense to understand that maybe there was more here, because that's what she started to dig into.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, I decided, hey, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to manipulate this situation. I'm going to be honest about how much I drink, how important it is to me. That's the only way I feel I connect with my husband, and, you know, all of that. So then she said this one line that was really the turning point of the story. And she just was like, well, it sounds like you guys are drinking quite a bit. That's not safe when you have two young children in the house. It is something that I had thought before.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that I knew to be true. And it took this stranger to say it out loud for me to, I just stopped. I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done, because I knew it to be true, but I always covered it up. I always forgave myself. I always moved forward. Somebody else may have in my life always been like, you're fine. You're okay. It was one night. Don't worry about it, you know, and excuse the behavior. But she called me on it. She held me accountable, and she shared with me a couple like titles of books to read to try to understand myself a little bit better. In time, I realized like those were definitely books for addiction. And so anyways, it was the next day that I was like, I'm not drinking again. And I don't think at that time, it was August 24th. I don't believe at that time I knew in my heart that it was alcohol is finished and forever. And I also don't feel that it's, I don't know if it's a good idea to be so definite about things, because you really don't know where life is going to take you. But I will say that over the next several months, I just continued to see so many benefits. And it wasn't all great. It wasn't all amazing. There were really hard moments too, but those hard moments were met with a different version of myself. Patience, love for myself, you know, grace. And so when I sensed that and how my reactions to not only myself, but to my children, to my husband were healthier, I was like, well, what's the common denominator? Like, what was the thing that was causing me to be the person I didn't want to be? It was alcohol. Yeah. I fully believe that. And so even when I have several people in my life who've been like, I'm sure down the line you'll have a drink, you know, I'm sure you'll pick up a drink. Like, you'll be at a wedding at some point, there'll be an open bar, and you'll probably have a drink. And there are certain people who it's worth it for me to unload and say, actually, no, let me share more. And then there's others where I'm like, yeah, you might be right. Because not everybody needs to get the explanation from me that I'm already so happy with and content with. Like, I know for me what this looks like.
Yeah.
So, I don't have to over explain myself. And that's something that I've kind of picked up and applied to different areas of my life too. It's okay. Like, as you get older, you don't have to over explain yourself.
Thank you so much for being so honest and vulnerable, and sharing some of your darkest, deepest, like secrets that we have about what led to
Mm-hmm.
this journey. But I know that your story will help so many that are listening. And it might, for them, it might not be alcohol, it's other, things that we are all addicted to. Like for some, it's shopping, for some, it's eating,
Yeah.
there's just, we all have crutches that we tend to have that we think is helping us, but inherently it's deeply hurting us.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that. My next question was actually going to be, what has been the most difficult part of this? Because, like you said, I'm sure it has not been
Mm-hmm.
easy. Has there been judgment from maybe not your closest family members, but your like a secondary circle of people?
Yeah. Yeah. So initially, within that first year, truly of giving alcohol up, I wasn't in a lot of social situations, which perhaps was to my benefit because I didn't have to re enter the social circles that were always so consumed by alcohol. And over time, I began to connect so much with people who also really didn't enjoy drinking, because I think that happens naturally. Like, you just attract and are attracted to individuals who have like-mindedness, similar values,
Yeah.
similar interests. So I was no longer wanting to make plans with a group of friends who were interested only in like bottomless mimosas. And the hard part about that is that you suffer the loss of some relationships, and you kind of have to be prepared for that. And some of them are really worth finding your common ground with, and some of them aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter, like you said, people have different addictions. And so, and as we grow into who we really want to be in this lifetime, you're going to shed individuals, people.
Yes.
It's just the truth of it. And it's a painful truth, but to get to on your journey, like, that's what's going to happen. I think that was one of the most challenging parts of it, is this like loss of relationships that I thought defined me,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that some of those relationships were really rooted in alcohol.
Mm.
And so to
When you
now
take that
be,
away, what are you left with?
yeah, it's like, what did we have?
Right.
What did we have there? And I'm not sure if I can answer that. And so the biggest relationship that I've like not, of course, given up on, that's Hiran, that's my husband. And because our relationship, I don't want to say that it was rooted in alcohol, but it was a large part of our connection. We met at a bar. We had a long distance relationship, which was very much um, surrounded by alcohol. Our
Mm-hmm.
trips visiting back and forth to each other were celebratory. They were drinking and enjoying. And so when you eliminate that, and like I made such a stark decision. And so when I eliminated that, it rocked his world. Like, his world was completely changed. And I had a lot of conversations with my sister, and she's such a great person when it comes to seeing both sides. And so because she loves Heron so dearly, like, she's always giving me his perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really good for me to have somebody like that in my life. So I'm thankful for that. And she's still a drinker, manages it, and Heron manages his drinking too, but like, he has moments where he overdoes it.
Mm-hmm.
And we might be at a party or a specific occasion in which he overdoes it. It's not often. When it happens, it's really hard for me, and it still is. And I'm grappling with that. Like, I'm figuring that out, like, I don't have the answer to it, but all I can say is that it's communication. It's over
Yeah.
communication. There's never too much communication. And so I have to share with him like how it makes me feel, but not in a way that makes him feel guilty,
Right.
because my decision to not drink it's not his decision, nor should it be.
Yeah.
And that's something I had to own.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because as one spouse in a relationship changes and transforms and they go on their own journey, we're often so eager and excited about the changes, positive changes that we're experiencing. And we're like, you should be doing this too.
Yeah.
But it's
And
not our
yeah,
decision to make for them.
it's not, that's his agency. That's his choice. And he's not making that choice to hurt me. He's not making that choice to deliberately harm me. I had to take myself out of it. There was one time where we were all together with friends and he was overdoing it. And I hated this version of him because I was like, sober, you're so much better in this space. Like, here's how you act when you're drunk. And I remember those people in my life who would call me out and be like, you get loud, or you pass out, or you know, are just like in the corner eating pizza. And like, it's like, nobody wants to hear that after they've had a night of drinking. And so I have to remind myself that, yes, I feel that I've transformed, but that old me, it's still in me. And I have to remind myself of what that felt like, to be shamed. Nobody wants to feel shamed. And so I cannot shame him because it'll crush us. So I did ask him that, like, if you're going to overdrink, I prefer not to be there. But I also know that's not like absolutely realistic. You know, this he's party, and you know, we're gonna have like family parties and we're gonna have weddings, and I can't expect him to stay sober when that's a moment for not only him but others around him to enjoy. So that's just more work that I need to do on myself.
Yeah. You mentioned something, and it might be a subtle point here, but you know, you were used to people shaming you during your drunk behavior, right? So you don't want to put that on your husband because you know what that felt like. But have you accepted the previous old you, the one who used to be addicted? Because sometimes as we are changing, it can be, we are looking
Yeah,
forward, right? But there's still a part of us that is like, oh, like I don't like that past me, right? And
yeah,
we're rejecting ourselves. And I
yeah,
feel like part of the healing needs to be to have compassion for that
hmm
old past self, because she was
yeah,
doing the best she could.
yeah. I honestly, I don't think I'm there yet. I'd like to get there. I still look back and I think my sobriety is quite fresh.
Mm,
It's only been a little over a year and a half. And so I'm still like, oh, I never want to even think about that. Or like, I'll have these flashbacks of times where, you know, I went extreme and other people saw it, and, you know, who was there and who saw, and kind of remind myself of stuff of like that. And I still like, I don't know if I have love for that
mm,
person. I would like to, but it's just that's work, right?
it
It's
is
work
work,
to,
and
yeah.
it's really important work, and maybe it's in your future. But I have
hmm
found that, yes, I've had to do similar work to you, but not around alcohol, but learning to embrace the me I'm becoming, but also
Yeah.
learning to have so much compassion for the old me that didn't know what the heck she was doing, and she made so many mistakes. Because there was a time where I just hated that part of me. I was like, I've changed, like I don't want anything to do with you. But then what
Yes.
you're really doing is fracturing parts of you and
hmm
putting parts of you away in the dark. And like, you cannot become your
Yeah.
whole self until you embrace every part of you, including the parts that you're ashamed of.
That's so true. And, you know, I think that you're making such a great point. And I actually would love to learn more about how to, right? Because we can say, okay, I want to have compassion and love for the old me, but how?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've embraced this new me and I'm so proud of her. And I think I'm at this, like, I'm like in the phase of like a high,
Yeah.
you know, and I can feel that. I'm like, this is the way of life. Like, this, if you're not doing this, you're missing out. And because I'm really living in that moment, um, you know, whatever comes up must come down.
Yes.
And it's the truth. So, you know, it's that, like, that's life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to
Um,
sound, you know, negative or
no, but
pessimistic,
it's
but I,
true.
I'm
That's
going
the
to have to
nature.
face that. Like, it's going to come down and I'm going to have to
Yes.
face it. So,
And it's the nature of life. It's all cyclical. And I'm so happy that you are in an upward swing of your life where everything feels like it's coming together and you're reconnecting to the most authentic part of yourself now that alcohol isn't clouding that, right? It was really that
yeah.
separation between the real you,
Yeah.
and the you that wasn't real, right? So
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
beautiful. How would you say it's changed you as a parent?
As a parent, I'm just so much more present.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that I feel much more capable. So when I was a drinker, my husband would oftentimes like just be the caretaker. So he would assume the role of taking care of course, Carter when we were drinking, and then like me too. And there was a lot of shame that grew around that I didn't face it at the time, but it was building in me. It made me feel very inadequate as a mother. And so that is the biggest difference in my parenting, is that I have this sense of like, I make decisions for my kids and I make them with a clear mind. That's the best thing for my kid. And I use my resources and nothing's getting in the way of that. And my kids, as long as I'm with them and I have control, right? Like, they're safe. And those are statements that I don't think I could have said when I was a
Mm,
drinker. So that's really what it is.
yeah, you trust yourself with your kids
Yes.
and around your kids.
And I still make a ton of mistakes. We all
Of
do.
course.
But I'm like, I know that those mistakes are things that I can work on. I can fix that. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's like, that's life. Like, whatever part of parenting I want to improve in, I can improve in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I feel like the word softness is coming up as I'm talking to you. I think alcohol gives us hard edges.
mhm.
And I feel like you take that away and we open our hearts and we let ourselves become softer to life, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, because you feel things a lot deeper.
Yes.
Whether it's like a physical feeling, because you don't have a hangover that's clouding your judgment of why any ailments, right? Like, you're able to pinpoint when alcohol is completely out of your system. Um, it no longer can be blamed for anything that you're feeling physically. So
Yes.
now, whatever it is, it's like, okay, now I'm no doctor, but I can like diagnose or figure it out, and, process of elimination. When I was a drinker, like, that hangover would sometimes last 2, 3 days. So if
Mm,
I was sluggish, it was probably because I was drinking. And like, how was I going to solve that? I was probably going to like take a day rest and start
right.
drinking again.
Mm,
Right.
yeah.
And so, for instance, today I was extremely sluggish. Like, I've been dragging, and all day I've been like, why am I dragging? What did I eat? How did I nourish my body? Have I exercised? Am I doing the things that make me feel good?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with alcohol, and like, that's a really good feeling for me because I just know myself better.
Yeah.
So,
That's wonderful. And you said the word feelings, and I feel like when you drink, um, like you become numb, right? Like
mhm.
there is no space for any true feelings. There is just like buzzing and there's numbness. And then there's like,
Yeah.
but when you're alcohol free, there's space within for you to feel all sorts of emotions, which,
Yeah.
and as humans, we are feeling beings, we're not thinking beings. So the
Yeah.
more we can let ourselves feel, the better life gets. Like the experience
Yeah.
of life gets better.
Yeah, I think I have more clarity in some relationships too that I didn't fully understand. And what I mean by that is that when I was drinking, when anyone's drinking, your inhibitions go down. And
Mhm.
so, if something's on your mind, then you want to talk about it, but you're not talking about it at a appropriate moment. So that would happen quite a bit if there was like some small conflict brewing with somebody, because we're people and we conflict, right? If there was some small conflict that would, after we had a couple of glasses of wine, all right, I'm going to bring it up. Nothing solved. Nothing is, it's actually, in fact, gotten worse. I'm now waking up with not only a hangover, but like anxiety. I've got now
Oh,
like,
that's a
and
good word.
I
Anxiety.
have an intense anxiety over what did I say? Who did I say it to? How did I say it? I had these feelings that I wanted to communicate in an appropriate way, but I chose 1 a.m. to do it. And I don't know how I came across, and now I'm too embarrassed to like ask. And these relationships that I just kind of plundered through, like that, that didn't feel good.
Yeah.
It didn't feel good. And over time, it built up.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't have that anymore. And there is freedom in that. Like, there is so much freedom in knowing that I can interact with people in a way that feels good to me. And I feel very much in control. And if there is conflict that arises that requires my intervention, I find an appropriate way.
Hmm.
And it's usually the relationships that I care about the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes it's not worth it, right? To
Right.
like dig in with somebody. But there's been times now, and I can see it, like now I recognize fully that when a relationship requires my love and attention and we need to talk about something, I'm going to bring it up, but it's not going to be at 1 a.m. over 2 glasses of wine. We're actually going to solve it.
That's a
We're actually
beautiful
going to solve
thing.
it. Yeah.
Coming back around full circle to your side gig of being
Hmm.
a influencer, fashion style influencer on Instagram, you obviously have a full-time career, you have two very young kids, you have a very full life, as a lot of us do. How, first of all, what made you decide to start this? Second question, how in the heck do you make time for it? Because I'm sure that is an excuse and a reason, a very valid reason, that a lot of people use to not start on their dreams.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would
Uh,
love to get your take on that.
Absolutely. So I started, let's see, about like maybe about 4 years ago. And it was a collaboration with a friend. And that kind of changed over time. And I took it on solo. Um, you know, the reason why I started is, of course, I kind of shared like just that an outlet. I saw other people doing it and I was like, I can do that. Like I can do that. And Instagram gives us, social media gives us that empowerment. Like,
Yes.
no matter who you are, you got a story and you can share it and hop on and someone's going to watch.
Yes.
And so, one of my friends is trying to kind of make it right now and like build a page, and she just is struggling to figure it out and learn. And she's not feeling confident. And so she's
Mm-hmm.
like, I suck at this. And I was like, you have to suck at things.
Yes. Here,
You
here.
need to suck. I sucked. I'm sure people were watching thinking, what is she doing? But like, it's, it feels good. Like, you suck at it and then learn
Right.
and suck some more and then learn. I look back, like when I'm scrolling through my page, and I'll look back a year ago and be like, oh my God, what was that? What did I do? And I like, because it saves everything. You have this like whole resume, your Instagram page is your entire, if you're trying to build something, like it truly is like a resume. And I can see like where I've learned and where I've picked things up. And I don't know, that's kind of exciting. So that in itself, like, you just really have to embrace that you're not going to be good at it at first, and you weren't born being good at things. I've learned that
Mm.
as a teacher too. Over years, I've just become more confident because you learn by doing, and I'm hands-on. And so when I get in there and I start doing it, those are my moments where I'm really growing the most. And you grow when you're uncomfortable.
Yes.
So when like Instagram stories became, it's a couple years ago when everyone was getting onto stories, I was like, I don't want to get on stories. Like, nobody cares about anything that I'm saying. Nobody cares. But I just kept doing it. And then I became comfortable. And so,
Yeah.
and I still am uncomfortable sometimes. Sometimes I like re-record myself a couple of times because you know, it, I'm still human. We're all human. I bet all content creators do that,
Absolutely. 100% yes. We all doubt ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, so my second part of the question was, how do you make time
Yeah.
for it? Because people tend to say, I don't have time, but I know it's not about having time.
Yeah. To be honest, it's such a balance. It requires your brain in about 50 places at the same time. It can be overwhelming.
Mm.
And I'm making sure that I take care of myself and detach from the buzzing. Because if I'm not working or momming, like I'm thinking I'm brainstorming, I'm like in the back of my head, I think there's always a brainstorming happening. And so I was talking to a girlfriend of mine yesterday, and I was like, I worry about that because I don't want to drive myself into the ground. And she's like, yeah, but that's your creativity. You
Mm-hmm.
can't turn it off.
Yeah.
Don't turn it off. Don't overwork yourself. Listen to your body, but don't turn that off, because that's like gold right there. And so I was like, okay. But yeah, your brain doesn't turn off. But I think that really I have to like credit Kieran a lot, because he does support this, and he sees how much I love it
Mm-hmm.
and how passionate I am. And so I think that like because of that, I can communicate with him, hey, I really want to go grab a few photos. I let him know, and then he's like, yeah, go for it. I also have become pretty quick with it. Like I know when and how. I think, because this is again learned through the process, right? So I think on the outside, people think that it takes me a lot longer than it does. Friends who I've gone on trips with and where I'm like kind of simultaneously creating content, they're like, oh wow, you're not on your phone all day. And I'm like, of course I'm not on my phone all day. I have a full-time job. And mind you, it's a full-time job that requires every ounce of my attention. Like I have 25 students in front of me. I can't be off,
Yeah.
right? Not for this work. And so it's really managing different things and plan ahead.
Mm.
Like if I don't plan ahead, if I don't wake up early, if I don't get a start to my day, if I don't have all of these things lined up, it's not going to be executed. There are days that happens. Things are not executed. But
Yeah.
on the regular, it's routine, and it's truly really, really planning ahead.
Yeah, I
So,
think what I'm really taking away from what you're saying is you realized that one of the things in your life that brings you an immense amount of joy because it lets you create, and creative energy is incredible energy because it makes you come alive because you have to be alive and present to create.
mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
you realize this is a part of me that gives me energy. So
Yes.
therefore, you find a way to make time for it. Because there are so many
Yeah.
things that we do that take away energy, and that's not a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing. We give to our spouses, we give to our kids, we give to our job, we give and we give all day long. What are the things that you can do to get back
Mm-hmm.
that energy? And when we find those things, we will automatically make time for them. But I think a lot of us struggle to find what those things are.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that maybe people who are struggling to find that, like maybe they're not clear on what it is that is energy giving. And that's very true, because after I create and after I've done like, you know, some batched content that I've had on my mind for a long time, I feel so excited, and I really like that energy, just it goes through you. And so you're right. That's so correct. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
exciting to be able to find that. And that can change, right? That can evolve and that can change over time. But I know now how important it is to always have something
Mhm.
that fills you aside from all the other moving pieces of life.
Absolutely. I'm always telling my clients, what are the things that bring you joy? A lot of them, when I ask them that question, they don't know because they've never asked themselves that question. They've always
Mm-hmm.
been duty bound, right? I got to do this and do
Yeah.
this. They have never asked themselves that question. Right now, I have a client who's like, I used to love running, but it's been a long time. And so when we talked about it, her whole face lit up. And I was like, that's it. That's the next thing. You're going to run a
Do it.
10K or a 5K. Like, you're going to start
Hmm.
training. So everybody always knows what brings them joy. It's just we haven't tapped into that in a long time and we've
Yeah.
forgotten. But when we slow down enough and ask ourselves that, we will get at least one answer, at least one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, Payal, I have absolutely loved this conversation. Thank you so much again for your vulnerability, your honesty, and your time. Where can our listeners find you?
On Instagram, Pile for Style.
Beautiful.
That's the
Thank you
place.
so much.
Yeah. Thank you. This was awesome.
All right, folks, check Payal out on her Instagram, Payal for Style, and I'll catch you on the next episode.